Welcome to Pherotone Studios. I have fitted a 5-way switch to my Fender Telecaster so that instead of having a 3-way switch with neck, bridge and the middle position being both pickups in parallel, position 2 is both pickups in series, so it's like a humbucker, and in position 4 they're out of phase, so it sounds, if I'm being honest, just a little bit weird. So this, just so you have an idea, this is how it sounds. This is the normal Telecaster middle position, so position 3 on this. And in position 2, so series like a humbucker. As you can hear, it's a lot louder, but it's also losing some of the top end, which isn't as much of a problem on a single coil guitar, but it doesn't cut through the mix as well. But that extra little push and volume can help to sort of drive an amp, I suppose a bit like, not like running a boost pedal, but it can give you a bit more of a kick if you want to push the amp to break up. Position 4, out of phase, just sounds a bit weird to be honest, but listen to this. Quite a usable setting in some instances. I'll go through these in a lot more detail at the end of the video. I'm just going to show you how I did this mod to begin with and go through what you need along with diagrams on how to do it, so you should know exactly what to do. To do the 5-way Telecaster switch mod, you're going to need a 5-way switch, which may sound stupid, but get one of those 5-way super switches. So it's got about 12 lugs in 2 rows, and I'm going to show you all the wiring. In fact, I've drawn a wiring diagram which I'm going to go through, put on the screen. I've done 2 additional wiring diagrams which are a close-up of the 5-way super switch with various colours, and just tells you, it's like a checklist, one of them, just so you know you've done it correctly, because you don't want to do it twice. This Telecaster, I forgot, it's actually got a volume knob which came not working properly, which I didn't change, and the tone pot on my Telecaster. This is a Fender Telecaster, and the tone pot from 0 to 3 is like on off, and then from 3 to 10 is like fine tuning. I don't like that. I like using the full suite, so I should have changed these knobs when I did this. That would have been clever, but I haven't, so I'm going to have to do that afterwards. It is easier to change everything at once, so if you're going to do that, obviously get your 250k pots, linear and log, and get a capacitor. So it's a 0.47 capacitor. I got an orange drop. It really doesn't matter what capacitor you use, but people like to see an orange drop or they start crying, so that's what I throw in guitars, even though this one's mine. Another thing I'm going to mention, with some Telecasters like the Squier Bullets, they have a thinner body. So this is 44mm thick, a full-size, what I call a full-size guitar body, which is on the Fender players, and the current Squier Affinities, they've gone back up to full size. Some of the older Squier Affinities are only 40mm, as are the Squier Bullets. So sometimes you may have to make this area here under the switch within the body a bit deeper for the switch to fit. So just get your control plate, fit the switch in it, see if you can push it all the way down, and you may need to take a bit out of the bottom and then maybe reline the cavity with some of this foil tape. It just protects it, insulates it from it's a bit of shielding really. So that's handy. Additionally, my wiring diagrams, I've used the same, I changed the colours of it after I did it initially, so it's the same colours as my Fender Telecaster, and I think that's quite consistent through their colours. One thing to note is that quite a lot of Telecaster neck pickups, I think on a lot of the Squiers I've seen, you may need to run an additional cable from the ground, basically the metal shell of the pickup cover. So there's the 2 leads that come off the sort of start and end of the wind of the pickup, and one of those will have another little wire going to like a little metal lug from this, which you will need to cut and then run a new wire from. So you may need to do that if you've got certain kinds of pickups. This one came with 3 wires, so that's fine. Some don't. I'll try and find a clip of me doing it. If I can't, then check out my 4-way switch, because I do a bit of a close-up of how I do that. But in general, don't worry about it. It's not difficult to do. Nothing to get worried about. One final thing I would suggest is, this is a different style Telecaster control plate, so there's a bigger gap between the switch and the first knob. So this pot is further back. Now this was about 25 or 30 quid, which is a lot of money for a bit of metal with some holes in it. However, when the normal Telecaster knob is right near the switch. The 4 and 5-way switches have more of a swing to them, so it's further this way, which means it's pretty much touching the knob, which is, I find, a massive pain. So I will put a link to these in the description. I don't really like the angled ones. I don't think they really solve the problem. These do, but they cost a fortune, so I buy loads of them, put them on all my Telecasters, keep some in a box, and gave them to all my mates, so we all did it at once. Job done. Now I'm going to go through the wiring diagrams. What you will need is a good soldering iron, some good solder. I will put links in the description to the ones that I use. I've since bought a better soldering iron because mine did actually struggle to melt some of the solder. It runs at 35 watts, so I bought a 40 watt one, which is a lot more expensive, but that's not the point. The first thing I did do was I took off all the cables from the old switch and just removed them completely, got them out of the equation, and I took the capacitor off just so I could see what I was working with. And then it just, you know, there's less stuff in this cavity. I also twisted the 2 cables from the output jack together because there's about 15 miles of cable in this and it's just getting in the way. And one final thing I did, which I don't think I filmed, on the 5-way switch, the lugs can stick out quite a long way and they may touch the bottom of the cavity, which may be covered in that shielding tape and may cause grounding problems, like you may have some switching problems. So I covered it in insulation tape before I put it together, back together. So you may want to just wrap some insulation tape around the whole switch so none of the metal components touch the outside of the cavity, because these cavities, there isn't actually that much space around stuff. It's not a problem, just it's a bit of tape. A bit of tape costs what, £1? And the amount you'll use, about 10p's worth. I'm going to go through the wiring diagram now, just briefly. There's 3 of them, so there's the main one which shows you everything, and then I've done 2 different close-ups of the 5-way switch, just so you can get your head around what to do. It's not that complicated, but to begin with you'll go, whoa. So don't be afraid, just do it, it doesn't take that long. This first diagram, so we're looking down at the control plate as if the guitar's on your lap and you've got the tone knob to your left and the switch to your right, so it's on the guitar is effectively on your lap. You've taken that control plate out and you've turned it over so the components are facing up at the ceiling and the switch and the knobs are facing down at the floor. So it's like you're looking down on it. So just so you've got a perspective of how this is. There's a capacitor that goes between the tone knob and volume pot. That's what I replaced with that orange drop. That little symbol from the top of the volume pot that looks like a line and a load of other strange lines, that's just a ground. So anything that needs to be grounded, for example, your bridge pickup normally has a ground like you'll see on the bridge pickup in the top right in that blue box. I called it an earth. I probably should have called that a ground, to be honest, but whatever. Sometimes there's a separate cable coming from the bridge or other areas of the guitar. You just need to make sure all earths run to one place. Well, they don't have to run to one place, but it's better if they all run to the back of, like, the volume pot, for example. I've tried to keep the colours consistent with my Fender Telecaster, so the neck ground cable, that's what I've got labelled as the new earth cable. So some pickups don't have that additional cable. This Telecaster pickup did have it on there, and it was green, so I've coloured that one green. Very clever. There's a white cable that comes off that neck pickup, so it's sort of black and white just so you can see it, and that goes to one of the end lugs of the 5-way switch. And I've done the other neck wire purple. It wasn't actually purple when I took it out the guitar, but I didn't want to have another black cable because the diagram would get too confusing, so just done that one purple. The hot from the bridge is yellow, and that goes to the opposite end of the 5-way switch, so in the same row as the neck pickup. So the neck pickup hot goes to one end, the bridge pickup goes to the other end, and then you sort of just daisy chain certain sections of it. So certain pickups can be on in certain positions and in phase or out of phase depending on the 5 positions. The notes in the top left just show you what the 5 positions are. So position 1 and 5 are just your neck or bridge pickup on their own. In the middle it's bridge and neck together in parallel, which is just the standard Telecaster setting. And in position 2 you've now got bridge and neck pickup in series, which is a bit brighter. It's not as high output, but it's a bit brighter. It's a very nice sound. And position 4 is out of phase, which sounds very strange, if I'm being honest. On to diagram 2. I've just labelled every lug on one side of it 1 to 12 and on the other side A to L, and just told you where those cables go. I've also used the same colours as the previous diagram so you get an idea of what goes where. As you can see, A to F, we don't use those. There's quite a lot of lugs that we don't even touch. So it's not as complicated as it looks, it's just I was trying to make it as clear as I could be. This is just another way of looking at that 5-way switch, just a bit closer up. This third diagram is the same picture as before, but I've just got a sort of to-do list, so I tell you where everything goes. I wasn't sure what the best way of thinking about this is, so leave a comment, let me know what was the most helpful. Just tried to give it to you in as many ways as possible so you understand what goes where and get your head around it and can sort it out. But this just lays it out in another way. It's exactly the same as all the other pictures, just, well, I suppose slightly different. I'm just going to go through all the sounds that this guitar can do now. So starting with position 1, which is neck pickup. I'm going to show you what the neck pickup and bridge pickup sound like on their own, so you have an idea, well, so you know how they sound. And then you can hear the new sounds this Telecaster can do. And we'll do the bridge now, so that was the neck first, and this is the bridge. Right, middle position. So this is parallel, which is just like how Telecasters always are. Some guitars aren't, so I think Dan Electro's may not be parallel. They are wired in series. But this is just a normal Telecaster middle position, and this is the middle position of the 5-way, so it does function like a normal Telly. And this is how it sounds. And now this is in series, so it's like a humbucker. So quite a lot darker, but also a bit louder. I don't know if you can see the dB meter in the background, gives you a bit of an idea. Right, position 4. Now this is out of phase, so it's going to sound weird. And I've found with that out of phase position, it does sound a lot better with the tone rolled back a bit, so. And even all the way off. Because if you're doing chords in that position, it can sound a bit. Can sound a bit harsh. Right, neck position with some chords. Position 2, series, the humbucker sound. Middle position, this is normal Telly sound. Position 4, weird out of phase thing. I might roll the tone down during this because it sounds a bit. Bridge. So it does all your normal Telecaster stuff. It does the parallel setting, sorry, the series setting, so it's like a humbucker, which is quite a handy setting to have. It just adds another sound to your Telecaster. So I've done a 4-way switch video where it does the normal 3 and adds the series. And the 5-way switch, the addition, is out of phase. And something like that can be handy for, we used to use, I had an out of phase setting on a Strat once, which I used to use for a Beatles song. I think it was I Feel Fine. It sounded great. It didn't sound quite as weird as that, but it sounds different on different guitars depending on the pickup spacing. But with this, it's quite handy in a studio setting. So you're writing a song, working on a song, layering it up, and you think, oh, it needs another layer, and what you're doing isn't quite sitting in the mix. Well, that setting is gonna stand out from everything else. So you could add another layer that sounds completely different, and you have a guitar that can do it. And it's quite handy to have a guitar in a studio that can do that. We always had we always had a Fender Telecaster, a Japanese one, which was really heavily modified. So it did all the normal stuff, and it did series as well. So it did a humbucker setting, and it did the out of phase stuff in 2 positions. I mean, pots popped all over the place. I can't quite remember what went where, but I could tell by the sound of it what I was trying to achieve. We used that as our layers guitar a lot of the time because I do most of my layers on a single coil Strat. Not that this is a Strat, it's a Tele, but it's the same sort of thing. And then add the humbucker sound, so you click on parallel, you can add your humbucker layer. I know it's not an actual humbucker, but if you don't have a humbucker guitar and you want a humbucker sound, or you can just use a humbucker guitar. And then you can use this sound, so the out of phase thing, just to add those extra layers. And it's a really handy thing to have for studio. For a live environment, probably not as much. Like I said, we used it on that Beatles track, we used to play that live. But I can't think of, and it does sound a bit horrible if I'm being completely honest. It just I suppose you can salvage it by rolling the tone off. I do prefer it, I think it's more usable with the tone rolled off, but I'd probably record it with the tone fully up because you can always EQ that in the mix. So I'm listening to that and I'm thinking it sounds like a cocked wah when you roll the tone back, so maybe you could use it to get like a Dire Straits setting, like Money for Nothing. Is that song? It starts with a cocked wah. It's one way of doing it, or you could just use a wah pedal, but I don't know. Be creative, let me know, leave a comment. Have you got an out of phase sound on your guitar? I mean, Peter Green had an out of phase setting on his Les Paul with his humbuckers, not on purpose. He accidentally, I think he was messing around with one of the pickups, put the magnet in backwards, and that was like his sound. It sounded amazing, but on a single coil guitar, that sounds a bit weird. I think it works better on a Strat, but it's not unusable and it's different. So I like the fact we've got that. Let me know, leave a comment. And if you just want to do the 4-way switch, I've got a video for that. One thing I would say is I'll put a link in the description for these control plates. So this middle knob is further towards, well, the back of the guitar, because these 4- and 5-way switches swing a lot further. So If you've got a normal one of these control plates, there's no gap here, and I always end up knocking the volume, which really annoys me. So with this, there's a huge gap, so you can do all sorts of stuff. It does look a bit weird having effectively a Strat switch on this, but this control plate, brilliant, but 25 quid though, so not the cheapest of things. Hopefully that was helpful. Check out my other videos.